Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan Emmett Pierce. This is a Ukraine war news update, second part thereof for the 4th of September 2024. So I'm a little bit later than I normally would be, got stuck watching Stuart Lee on YouTube as you do. Right, okay, so we're going to start with Norway. They're going to allocate 48 million euros to support the UK's initiative to purchase drones and air defence systems for Ukraine, according to the Norwegian government. So that's the drone initiative run by the UK and Latvia. Brilliant stuff there. Hopefully that will help out a load. Now, talking about the UK, they've signed a $392 million deal for artillery shells to support Ukraine. So let's have a look at this. This is massive. UK has signed £300 million, $392 million contract to procure 120,000 152 mil artillery shells for Ukraine. The UK government supports. So those are Soviet-era artillery shells. The contract, part of the International Fund for Ukraine, IFU, aims to deliver these munitions over an 18-month period. Several thousand rounds are expected to reach Ukraine by the end of 2024. Quote, UK military equipment continues to prove invaluable for Ukraine's war effort. The ongoing defence operation in Kursk underlines the crucial importance of continued support, says the UK Defence Secretary John Healey. The IFU, initially launched by Denmark and the UK in 2022, has attracted contributions from 8 countries, totalling over £1 billion or $1.3 billion. Contract managed by Defence Equipment and Support, the UK Ministry of Defence's procurement arm is expected to stimulate European industrial capacity and secure reliable supply chains for Ukraine's ammunition needs, according to UK's government's statement. The latest procurement follows previous IFU support packages, which included drones, minefield clearing capabilities, combat vehicle spares, and air defence systems. The UK has contributed 500 million quid or $655 million to the fund. Other contributors to this scheme are Australia, Denmark, Iceland, Lithuania, and the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, and Sweden. And again, that's on the back of, it says here, on the 3rd of September, the Norwegian government also announced the contribution of an additional 570 million Norwegian kroner, $53.4 million to the International Fund to purchase drones and air defense systems. Good stuff there. Now, German aid to Ukraine is reporting that German media are currently talking up the idea that Germany is allegedly, he emboldens that, or puts that word in bold, wants to procure 6 more IRIS-T SLM, so medium-range air defense systems for Ukraine, and another 6 for the Bundeswehr, the German army. At least the Tagesschau claims the source for this is a Reuters report. I've checked this and it makes me wonder, and I cannot find the Reuters report claiming this, neither on their Twitter timeline nor via the search function on their website with the keywords IRIS-T, Germany and Ukraine. I also checked via the Twitter search function to see if someone had linked to the article. Nothing. So this is being widely reported, and yet he can find nothing. I therefore cannot confirm the reports at this point in time. According to current information from the German government, Germany's already contracted 8 additional IRIS-T SLM fire units to Ukraine, 2 of which will be delivered this year, bringing the total number of supplied fire units to 12 in a couple of years. As of today, only, sort of scare quotes, only 4 of them have been supplied. Additional funds for new announcements or procurements. Please remind yourself that 1 fire unit alone already costs around 140 million euros, have not been available since June 2024, and the government is currently planning for the next few years without additional funding for Ukraine. So I'm a little bit confused about these reports. 6 fire units are already being procured for the Bundeswehr, 1 of which has already been delivered. Again, as of now, I can't confirm the reports, as I'm not even able to find the original Reuters report for it, so it wouldn't make much sense given our budget problems right now. I'll keep an eye on the situation, provide more context later if I find anything. So I could have just reported to you that Germany are providing 6 for Ukraine and 6 more and 6 for the Bundeswehr, and that seems to be some kind of new thing, but that is not immediately apparent, so that's probably the best synopsis of what's going on there. Now, I did a breaking news update on this yesterday. US long-range JASM cruise missiles will be included in an aid package for Ukraine this autumn, according to Reuters. The integration of these missiles into Ukrainian military is currently underway. Additionally, there is consideration of allowing their use against targets within Russia. So the idea about these is, if you're going to provide cruise missiles with a fairly decent range, they'll probably get the lower ranged versions, but still, that's going to be 400 kilometers into Russia. If you provide these to, or thereabouts, to Ukraine, then what's the point of providing these if you're not going to allow them to use them into Russia, just to use them into occupied territories of Ukraine? Now, that'd be useful, but not like super useful, because Russia's already removed from within Ukraine a number of key installations. They've moved back airframes and not using air bases in the way they previously were. I think 2 out of the 5 air bases on Crimea are not being presently used by the Russians. So, yeah, one would assume that it would have to come in or alongside a removal of restrictions of using Western weaponry into Russia. But we shall see. Now, Bulgaria's caretaker defense minister, Atanas Zaprianov, confirmed that the country has sent 8 packages of arms, equipment and ammunition to Ukraine in line with National Assembly decisions. While he acknowledged sending such equipment, he could not confirm if the Grozdika howitzers seen in photos were specifically Bulgarian, noting that other former Warsaw Pact countries are also providing similar aid to Ukraine. I reported the other day that a bunch of those self-propelled howitzers appear to be in Ukraine. Thing is, they are in Bulgarian colours, so you'd have to say it probably is one of those one of those on the sly ammunition procurements. Now, I'm not showing you this for any other reason that it's local. Subsea Craft Victor Diver Delivery Unit, High Speed Covert Special Forces Insertion Craft, whatever that means, is on trials in Portsmouth Harbour. Hey, that's just down the road from me. And that is from Gosport side, looking across to there's the Isle of Wight ferry, the Isle of Wight catamaran by the looks of it. This is my neck of the woods. This is so over from Gosport side. I was Gosport born and bred. Well, Leon Solent, which, let's face it, is centre of the world. Anyway, I find it interesting that, well, it's not interesting. It's exactly as you would expect. The UK are going to be involved heavily in naval technology. We are very much a naval nation, and we have been supporting Ukraine in that domain. Big time. Along with Norway, we're part of the Maritime Coalition. This is the sort of technology that you are going to see gaining now, because I think there must be an awful lot of pressure on defence manufacturers to be ahead of the game. We are now at a state of, or I would say we are in a state of world war at the moment, where we're all involved in supporting Ukraine in this kind of global war that involves all sorts of, again, different domains, cyber warfare, information warfare, political warfare, economic warfare, and conventional warfare. And so, yeah, every country is going to be using the Ukraine war as a test bed to inform their own defense industry as to what will be needed in future wars. And one of the things that we are seeing is surface drones being incredibly useful. And now this is not a surface drone, but I wonder whether there are craft like this being developed in allied nations and then being tested in Ukraine. Look, have one of these. We talked about the Dragonfire, not that drone dropping thermite, that kind of Smaug Dragonfire thing, but the laser that the UK has just developed that is supposedly being sent to Ukraine. We get to test all of these things in the perfect kind of test bed, which is an actual war zone. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about Portsmouth, really. Right, moving on to geopolitics. So, as we know, Putin has been in Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia because he wants that pipeline to be resurrected that the Mongolians seem to have put a kibosh on. So despite the international arrest warrant, Mongolia treats Putin like a golden Tsar. Mongolia adds itself to the rapidly growing anti-Western coalition and surely will face no consequences as they help build the Russian, North Korean, Iranian war machine. I don't know, that's Jane Kiev being typically rhetorical. I think there was the idea that Mongolia is a little bit caught between a rock and a hard place, but Mongolia says it refused to arrest Putin, so they've signed to the Rome Statute. That means if an international criminal court arrest warrant goes out on someone and they come to your country, you are obliged to arrest them. They haven't done that, and they said that they haven't arrested him because of energy dependence. Mongolian government did not arrest Putin during their September the 2nd visit, citing energy dependence on Russia. 95% of their petroleum and 20% of their electricity is at stake. So there you go. That's that and that's pretty obvious, right, as to being the reason why they wouldn't do anything about Putin visiting. Now, Irish Prime Minister is visiting today Kiev. Here he is getting off of the train, so good stuff there. We've had Zelensky, as he always does, is speaking to lots of people. Here's just one more example on the phone to the Prime Minister of Canada, given all of this stuff that's happened over the last few days in terms of massive strikes and so on and so forth. We focus on a joint work with the Drone Coalition and the implementation of bilateral security agreement signed on February the 24th. I urge the Prime Minister of Canada to intensify advocacy among partners regarding granting Ukraine permission and the necessary means to strike military targets on the territory of the aggressive country. So yet again, this is right at the top of the agenda. Finally, we discussed the preparation of the thematic conference on a peace formula point, release of prisoners and deportees to be held in Canada. So there is that. Right, we've heard recently that the EU are importing more gas from Russia than they are from the US, which might sound really bad. And it is, it's a shame. There's still a lot of gas coming into Europe, and you're going to be thinking about Slovakia, Hungary, Serbia, those kind of nations particularly, but also other nations as well, and LNG coming through, like, is it the Netherlands, Belgium, I think Belgium, Spain as well, etc., etc. Anyway, as you can see, says just in case, Russian imports to the EU are what is this, LNG, just trying to work out whether this is just gas in general, different types of gas, probably. Anyway, as you can see, Russian imports to the EU are a small part of pre-invasion volumes and have remained largely stable since quarter 3 of 2022. This is because the Nord Stream and Yamal pipelines are transporting zero, so Nord Stream was obviously blown up. Ukrainian transit is very low, so that leaves Turk Stream and LNG. So Turk Stream is a pipeline that I presume goes through Turkey, and LNG is where they condense it into a smaller, into liquid form. They turn it into liquid form, the gas, and transport it there by ship. So obviously you can then access many other countries and just with a pipeline. As you're both near capacity all the time. This news title is caused by something else. Drop in US LNG imports, not a rise or return to trading gas with Russia. So this is giving you a bit more context on the idea that the EU is suddenly, importing loads more gas from Russia. Actually, it's been fairly stable since that massive decline from the beginning of the war here. And although it's gone up a little bit, it is actually relatively stable. And you can see all the different sources for these imports. So certain ones like the Yamal pipeline, totally non-existent there. Nord Stream as well is this one at the bottom. Nord Stream is doing an awful lot, and then does no more anymore. Anyway, Germany is apparently standing in the way, according to the Daily Telegraph, of a Czech bid to limit EU travel of Russian spies. Germany's in a pretty interesting position at the moment, given that the east of the country has just voted very much in favour of the AfD and the BSW, so the far right, to the degree of sort of 30% plus, so about a third of the electorate there, supporting the far right, who themselves kind of support Putin and Russia. The connections between the AfD and the Kremlin are very well established. And then you have BSW also being far left, although much smaller part of the electorate, sort of, somewhere between 10 and 16%, I think. BSW attracting some support there as well, and they are pro-Kremlin, really. So it's a real worry that almost half of the electorate in the East are, or at least the kind of official lines or the semi-official lines of their party, are anti-Ukraine aid. So you've got then, with the general election coming up soon, you've got the sort of centre-left coalition becoming less and less popular. They're easily going to be beaten. I would have thought the CDU, which is the Christian Democratic Union, and maybe other coalition partners, would get in next. And that's going back to the days that's Angela Merkel's old party. Now they are pro-Ukrainian, so that's really good, and anti-Russian. But there are going to be so many things to consider. There's so many political machinations taking place in Germany at the moment. They are somewhat compromised, and it's all a bit of a hot mess. Anyway, standing in the way of Czech bid to limit EU travel of Russian spies is certainly, it's unpopular with me, that's for sure. Right, Russia has purchased $29.2 billion in cash from the African state of Rwanda in one transaction in January 2024. Quote, this follows from closed data from Russian customs statistics, which the publication Vertica has reviewed. So they are going around the world buying up dollars, it seems, probably to do commercial economic transactions. They are, at the moment, apparently using gold to do transactions in China, as the secondary sanctions on the Chinese institutions, the Chinese banks, are having their desired effect. So the Chinese banks are refusing to do transactions with Russia, but Russia are getting around this with buying up gold, and it seems, or not buying up gold, selling gold, using gold in their transactions, and it seems also buying up a huge number of American US banknotes around the world. Is that the sort of thing you would do if you're in a really good position? No. So I think it shows that they are in fairly dire economic straits. Okay, Colby Badwa here, quoting actually from, looks like the typeface, it looks like Reuters to me. Might not be. So Russia's trade with India is booming and bilateral payments are proceeding smoothly without the glitches that have been hampering trade with other countries, Anatoly Popov, deputy CEO of Russia's largest lender, Sberbank, told Reuters. Now, having just said that the secondary sanctions are having their effect on the Chinese banking system, here is a claim that, and it's coming from the Russians, so take it with a pinch of salt. Here is a claim that there is frictionless trade with India and no problem there, and that's coming from one of Russia's largest banks. Okay, now Russia was secretly buying dual-use goods from India, according to the FT. The FT quoted Russian government correspondent as saying Moscow was also studying the possibility of building factories in the country and planned to invest in joint Russian-Indian projects for the development and production of electronics, the publication said. Now, according to the leaked documents in October 2022, the Russian Ministry of Industry and Trade developed confidential plans to spend about $1 billion on the purchase of critical electronics through channels that were supposed to remain undetected by Western countries. So India is a bit of an issue. It appears that a lot is being done between Russia and India, although obviously Modi went and he visited Putin previously, but more recently Zelensky. There's hope that there would be a bit more, some closer ties between India and Ukraine. But India are going to be fairly transactional, I think, setting morality and politics. Well, morality to the side. They are going to be trying to make the most out of Russia being at war, Russia being a pariah state, Russia being sanctioned, a bit like China, getting their hydrocarbons cheaply and making hay when the sun shines there. Now, Microsoft has started disconnecting Russian companies from cloud services, including Microsoft 365, Office 365 and Teams, according to Russian media. So that's really good news. Hopefully, everything becomes more difficult, more challenging for the Russians. And at some point, it all gets a bit too much. And then they realise, going to war with Ukraine probably wasn't a great idea. Right, there's a viral story claiming that Kamala Harris was involved in the 2011 hit and run that left a 13-year-old named Alicia Brown paralysed. The story's fake, basically, and is most likely part of a pro-Kremlin disinformation operation run by an ex-Florida cop, previously reported on. I've talked to you about him previously. He's now in Russia, that ex-Florida cop, involved in spreading or creating and spreading, possibly creating and certainly spreading disinformation. One has to be really careful in this election period that, be careful not to believe everything you are told, even if it aligns with what your political beliefs are or what you want to be true. So watch out for that confirmation bias. It will take effect. If you are someone who really likes Trump, doesn't like Kamala Harris, watch out, because you may be particularly vulnerable to Kremlin propaganda. And I'm not trying to be political in that. It's just they know what they're doing. The Russians are very good at that. Now, talking about the US elections, we'll sort of finish on this. I just want to address a point that someone made, Bert, at length in my video the other day. Actually, it's just my overnight news, but he's obviously taken offence. You make a number of logical fallacies every time you discuss Trump policy on Ukraine versus Biden. By the way, whenever you talk about, just a note from someone who's been discussing logical fallacies for the last 15 years and writing about them, like, explain how they're logical fallacies. Don't just say, oh, you use logical fallacies and then proceed not to substantiate that. So what logical fallacy? Is this just your intellectual sounding way of saying that I'm wrong? Okay, but you got to substantiate it. Anyway, every time you discuss Trump policy on Ukraine versus Biden, and you ignore several objective facts, some of which frankly carry much more weight than the massive assumptions you make about what Trump might do versus what we know Biden is doing. Trump has a very long history of making extreme statements in multiple rhetorical vectors, then making a decisive and pragmatic decision that is not necessarily what he alluded to originally. In other words, Trump says one thing, does another. So how this guy, Bert, interprets this is called cunning. So he's saying Trump is cunning. Now, I've read an awful lot on Trump. I've written an awful lot on Trump. I've listened to and read people who've worked with Trump. He's not cunning. This is someone who wants Trump to be cunning, who loves Trump, and therefore everything Trump does has to be interpreted through the lens of it being good and positive. Now, he'd accuse the same of me, but I'm actually referring to people who know him and who've worked with him. And there's a reason why 40 out of the 44 people that work with him in his administration are not endorsing him this time round. But you can be the one that says he's cunning. That's fair enough. I would utterly disagree. Anyway, this is called cunning, and yes, liberal intellectual children that lack the ability to focus on actions versus words struggle with this concept. Another hint: if you want me to change my opinion, don't sit there and insult me. What is an objective fact is that at least two former members and likely future members of the Trump administration have laid out very clear plans for how they would pressure Putin. They would, according to the Trump team, tell Putin that he needs to negotiate in good faith, including significant concessions from current territorial holdings, or Trump would multiply the level of military aid from the US by a factor of at least 2. Okay, now this is referring to the Kellogg and Flights plan. Now, this isn't from the Trump administration. This is from two people who, not in government and not in any positions of power at the moment, politically speaking, have come up with a bunch of ideas and then said, this is what Trump could do. Yeah, he could do that. He could do an awful lot of stuff. But looking at what Trump has actually said, what his son has said, what the people around him have said, what J.D. Vance, his vice president, has said, it is highly unlikely that that would be the course of action he would take. Now, he could do that, but it wouldn't be a result of cunning. It would be a result of him saying a bunch of stuff and then other people convincing him when he gets into power that that's an absolutely freaking crazy thing to do. It's stupid. Now, he might then go, oh, look at how cunning I was saying this, but doing this. The reality would be, this is what I said before, stupidly, and then some people convinced me that something else was probably a better idea. So, the way this is framed is completely incorrect. They would, according to the Trump team, do all that. Now, if Biden had doubled the military aid given to Ukraine instead of withholding the most strategically important assets, Patriot, Abrams, ATACMS, etc., at critical times, Ukraine would have won this war a year ago. I don't deny that particularly. I think the Biden administration could have given a lot more. Now, where this guy goes wrong, and the reason I'm talking about this, why you mentioning some of those comments, is because these are really common positions. Okay, so he says the Biden administration are weak and not able to deal with a broken Russia. They're also arrogant enough to think they can manage Putin into a solution, but Putin is more intelligent, more patient, and most of all, Putin is willing to risk it all. Biden and Sullivan are cowards and will never take the big risk. Knowing this, Putin has an enormous strategic advantage. Okay, I would slightly disagree by saying that they are weak because they are beholden to anti-escalation thinking. And that is serious. You shouldn't, like, if you get anti-escalation wrong, right, you end up in a nuclear war, which is the end of humanity. So you can understand why you would err on the side of caution there. I don't agree with that, and I think those red lines have been crossed, and nothing's happened. And I think allowing Ukraine to strike into Russia would be fine, and it would be another red line that would end with Russia whinging and whining, but not pressing the red button. Anyway, enter Trump, a complete wild card. He and his surrogates have said that under no means would they force Ukraine to accept current map lines, and Putin would absolutely need to make concessions. No, Trump has said in his actual words already set out that Ukraine would have to concede territory. So, which is like, he's the art of the deal, right? He doesn't know how to do deals. Trump is useless at pretty much everything he says he's great at. He's already said, it's just insane. Like, you don't go into a deal saying, well, we're already prepared to do this, which is towards what you want. You start ridiculously this side, and you're probably going to meet somewhere here, but you stay strong on being this side. Like, you don't go, I mean, it's called the anchoring bias. If you want to talk about fallacies or actually cognitive biases, the anchoring bias there, he's anchored himself. He's not anchored the other person. Well, he's anchored the other person in a way that is positive for the other person. So he's anchored by saying, we're already going to accept Ukraine giving territory away. So he's wrong. Just go and listen to actual Trump's words in previous interviews. But anyway, this implies that Ukraine would also, I think Zelensky had the luxury to be honest. He would accept some minor concessions if Russia deoccupied significant portions of Ukraine, including some or all of Crimea. If you were capable of acknowledging the fact that Biden doesn't want Ukraine to win, he does, but he doesn't want there to be nuclear war. What would be your advice for Ukraine? Really great question, and actually I don't have time to discuss that here, but that's something I'd be meaning to do a whole video on. Should they continue to sacrifice their male population at the altar of Western values? Should they continue a fight that they cannot win without Western support, knowing as they approach this chalice it will be pulled away from them by vampires in DC and Berlin? Show some damn maturity and at least be willing to discuss the possibility, you sod. Shut up, Bert. No, honestly, like, don't be rude. I spend an awful lot of time talking about this, and I am frustrated with the Biden administration, don't get me wrong. I'm just very, very confident the Trump administration would be far worse. And I have got a bunch of substantiation for that. I would suggest going and seeing my entire video on that subject. Ukraine War Update Extra, Trump and Ukraine, he ain't no fan. And go back and look, you can go back to 2008 and beyond to see he's no fan of Ukraine. And he is quite a fan of Russia, and his son is a fan of Russia. And they have connections to Russia, and he loves strongmen, etc., etc. Like, go and look at what Trump has said and all the people around him have said and his family have said and what his vice president said, and then get back to me. And then don't tell me that Trump and javelins, but he gave javelins to Ukraine. No, he didn't. Congress got javelins to Ukraine. John McCain, a Republican, got javelins for Ukraine. Trump tried to hold them up, wanting Zelensky to give him dirt on Biden, and then eventually gave them, and he was impeached for it. So, yeah, he's no fan of Ukraine, and he will not be good for Ukraine. And if he does, it's because his original position, he would be educated on the fact that his original positions are completely unjustifiable politically and in terms of US national security and objectives. Anyway, that's enough from me. Just please make sure that if you do speak to me, there are better ways to do it, but also try and substantiate your claims a little bit more carefully, like, you know, where are my logical fallacies? Anyway, take care. Speak soon.